So we move on to Anna Johansson, and one of the important things that I'd like you all to know here is that many of us who are involved in clinical research and are in clinical research of the administrative end of it have worn a number of different hats. Most of you in the audience have probably received some degree of education, training in sort of how to theoretically think about your research idea, maybe some biostats, maybe some research design. But I think all of us could benefit from a little extra help. Anna, I don't want to say controls, that's really the wrong word, directs, directs two separate groups of individuals here, both of whom are really instrumental in helping you get your research sort of off the ground. One of her tasks is that she directs the IRB navigation program. And the navigators serve as a I don't want to call them mentors exactly because that's really not their role, but they really can help you in a lot of ways when you're starting out with just the idea, the mere glimmer of a research project. The other group that she directs is the Scientific Research Overseer Group. And while the Navigator program is voluntary and it's something that you can choose or not choose to avail yourself of, the SRO group is an organization that you will definitely have to interact with. And so Anna is here to talk to you a bit about both of those programs and again to serve as a resource for you as you get your research moving. Thank you.
Good morning. Can you all hear me? Okay. So I'm going to talk to you today about a couple of programs that Babu already gave you a little bit of an overview about. I'm also one of the vice chairs for the IRB. So just to provide you with a little bit of framing, as vice chairs, we do a number of the reviews that are submitted to the IRB office. So that's one of the other roles that that I play here at the institution. And let's see. Oh, here we go. So let me just preface this discussion by letting you know that you're going to actually hear more about the IRB process very shortly from Mary Williams, the director of the IRB, who's going to tell you more about that process. And it's really for those folks who intend to use human subjects in their research, so human participants in any way. They can be patients, they can be faculty, staff, trainees, they can be people's information or their remaining tissue. All of this engages you in human subjects research. So there are two processes here. We've got the scientific review process and then the IRB navigation process. They're both resources for you. What's really important for you to know is that one is absolutely mandatory. You cannot you cannot even go up to the IRB office and submit something to them as far as an initial application until you've gone through the scientific review process. And just very briefly, who are these folks? The scientific review officers, they have the mandate to review all of your applications, all IRB applications, even your exempt. So you might want to kind of store that term in short-term memory because Mary Williams will tell you more about it. These applications before you submit to the IRB, there are about 30 to 35, we call them SROs. They're assigned by division and department so that we have content expertise for all of the kinds of studies that are in our human subjects research portfolio. And the IRB navigators are an additional resource that you can tap. We work with new investigators and we sort of guide them through the IRB process, especially the first time. And there are three of us. I have two colleagues that work with me. We kind of cover by division and department. So before we talk about what these resources can do for you, let me just ask you to put this in context, these three very rough cut buckets, if you will. You've got the pre-approval process, you're writing your proposal, or you're thinking, I'd like to study diabetes and I think I need to draw some blood. That may be as far as you are in your thought process, and that's okay. But you're writing you're writing a proposal, you're coming up with your study design, you might be writing a grant application, You may be working with an industry sponsor and you need to, contact the clinical trials office. These are all things that you're doing prior to the approval process, and then you go through the approval process. And the approval process I'm referring to is the human subjects approval process, where you engage the scientific review process and the IRB review process. And then also the protocol performance stage, and this is that great, potential, the unknown that we want to have known a lot more definitively, which is why we're going to talk about how much work we want you to do up front. But even then, you have these resources available to you. So in terms of the scientific review process, scientific review exists so that we have additional support for the human research review process here at BIDMC. We want to ensure that we are conducting the highest quality research possible, that it's ethical, that it's safe, that it has exceptional scientific merit. And this is done, this process begins with these SROs who are assigned by division so that you can tap someone that has expertise in the area in which you're conducting human subjects research. And they're going to look at scientific merit. They're going to ask you to justify the use of human research subjects in your research. So this is a higher risk study, do you have preclinical data? Is there an animal model? They're going to also look at the risk-benefit ratio. They're going to do that via the study design. And the IRB will too. I'll share that with you in a moment. They're going to look at your study design and say, are you going to be able to answer your question? Are you going to be able to do that using the fewest number of humans possible, right? So the whole idea is to minimize risk, put the fewest number of people at risk in order to be able to answer the study answer the question you're interested in. They'll go over your analysis plan, might point you in the direction of some additional statistical resources if they feel that's needed, and also any additional data safety monitoring that either is required by a sponsor, by the NIH, or that is just appropriate to have for your project. And how does the process work? What does it look like? Well, again, it occurs before IRB review. You have to get full approval from your SRO before you can proceed. They'll review all parts of your application. So you need to have a full and complete IRB application in hand when you go to see them. You should also bring along a grant proposal if you've submitted one or are about to submit one. The sponsor protocol for industry-sponsored research. The SROs have alternates because sometimes an SRO may actually be one of your co-investigators, or they may feel they somehow have a conflict with the research you're asking them to review. So they can actually ask for additional reviewers to weigh in, especially with studies that really cross departments. So something is recruiting and enrolling in the ED, but they've got, there's a really significant component from neurology or infectious disease. So they may want to call on their colleagues to provide some additional review. And our hope is that you end up with a project that's been reviewed by an SRO that's complementing the IRB review process. The IRB still, in the end, is the final arbiter. They have the final say about scientific merit. However, knowing that an SRO with content expertise will provide some assurance that that's already in place. And the IRB, to put it in their context, will really review the risk relative to the merit of the study. Now, the SRO can require major changes. So it's not that you're going to take your application and just someone's going to sign off on it without asking you any questions. There have been times when SROs have sent things back, or they've notified the IRB to say, you know what, I really have some issues with this project. I went ahead, I sent it to you, but this is what I want you to consider. They may come back to you and say, for example, okay, you're conducting a medical record review. I really don't think you're going to get at what you want by doing so. How about, a prospective study where you can get most of the data out of the medical record, but you need to collect a few additional data points. It's minimal risk, but you need to interact with the subjects to do that. Okay, now you need a verbal consent process. You're like, well, I had not planned for that at all. How do I do that? How do I add that component on? Well, hopefully our navigators can step in. Hopefully our navigators step in early and can help you as well But at that point, you can call on a navigator. And we started this program a few years ago, 4 years ago now. I'm a faculty member also in the Department of Medicine and Translational Research. We kind of piloted this to our investigators, and working with new investigators who are really conducting a range of clinical and translational research, we really intended to develop a process that would allow people to understand the regulatory requirements, but really more how to operationalize the regulatory requirements as you're thinking about your project. So trying to get together with investigators very early on in the process, so that we can start building in, what the regulatory requirements will be, so that these things don't come as a surprise when you're getting ready to, wrap things up and submit to the IRB. So what we'll do when we meet with the navigator, you'll contact us either directly, or we have a website, provide some information, a little form you can complete, to get, again, you're starting with, I think I need to draw some blood to study what I want to study. Well, we'll ask you to take your, take your thinking a little bit further, put a little more down on paper before we meet with you. Because then we're going to say, okay, what components of the application are required? Because is this a expedited study? Do you need to go to the full board? What ancillary groups need to be involved? We'll help you assess the risk level, and then again, identify the regulatory considerations and how to operationalize those. For example, the informed consent process that you need. And then once we have this fleshed out, we show you how to translate that into the famous IRB forms. Yeah. And then also you may get comments back from your scientific reviewer, or you may get comments back after initial review and need some help translating some of those requirements, and how do you then resubmit to the IRB so that you can get full approval and you can move along with your research. And we just try to, in this process, emphasize to you that it's really it's important to begin with a really solid foundation. So if it looks like we want you to do like all this heavy lifting on the front end, it's because we do. It actually makes the rest of the process go so much more smoothly if you can. So let's go back to the context again and kind of sum this up. You have the pre-approval, approval, and the performance components of this process. So you're writing your study design, your proposal. Well, we ask you to get engaged with a navigator really early on. And then you've finished, you go to your scientific review officer, you get their sign-off. Goes to the IRB, goes through the review process, there may be some additional requirements. You may want some help with that. A navigator can work with you again. And then you're approved. You find you need to amend your study along the way. How do you do continuing review? What's that process about? You can contact a navigator. And here are your contacts. You might want to save this. And again, hold all this in sort of short-term memory, because Mary Williams is going to tell you more about the process. And then so you'll remember that you have these resources at your disposal. Any questions? Okay, thank you very much. Good luck.